One of the things I learned working with professional chefs is the attention to detail in every respect when you're thinking about your meal. And for me, that means side dishes. So one of my favorite sides, because we're making pork tomorrow, we're going to do the carnitas again, is pickled red onions. And these are amazing. So we're going to take a red onion, we're going to pair it up with a beet, and pickling. What is pickling? Pickling is just vinegar, salt, sugar, and spice. That's all it is. And this is a super easy recipe for you to get into pickling for the first time and try it out. Once you make it, you will find all kinds of places to put these, because these are great on salads. You can eat them straight. They're delicious. Serve it like you would serve ginger with sushi, the same kind of way. Amazing on pork tacos, and that's what we're going to have tomorrow. So, so join me. We're going to do pickled red onions. There's only a couple different kinds of tools that I use very often. I mean, obviously I use my knives all the time. But for this recipe, it really helps to have a mandolin. This is a super cheap one, but I end up using it quite often, and you'll see why in a minute. It came with one of these things. This is actually the one from my big mandolin. I don't use these because when you're trying to do garlic, you're going to end up with half the garlic left on this thing. So what I do instead is get one of these sharp gloves. And so this is a glove that will keep you from cutting yourself. And very handy. You can see that the fingertips are blown out. It's time for me to get a new one, but I'll be very careful. I'll show you how. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mandolin these into the directly into the pot, and I'm keeping my fingers back and just having thin slices of onion is what I want. I don't want them paper thin because you want a little bit of texture. And then as I get down to the bottom, I just let my hand go flat so that you don't end up getting caught on that super sharp blade. But this is just a really fast way to bust down an onion like magic. Then what I'm going to do is cover it with water, and I'm going to bring it to a boil, and then I'm just going to let it sit in the hot water. This is going to take some of the sharpness, some of the sulfur out of the onions, and then we're going to drain them, and then we'll do it again with the vinegar. So I said that I'm going to do garlic as well, so I'm going to go all the way down to 0 and come back to 1. And this is where these gloves come in really handy. Since my finger's broken on that one, I'll just be careful. Keep him back out of the way. But see, you couldn't do this. You couldn't do this on with using that holder. You'd end up having a terrible accident or just leaving too much behind. So that's our thin sliced garlic. So we'll let that stuff boil. We'll get our garlic all shaved down, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to mix in the spices, and I'll show you that in just a second. So these guys are boiling. You can smell the sulfur coming off of the onions, and that's a good thing. That's what we're trying to do. So I'm just going to turn that off and let it sit. Then we're going to go and work on our beet now. The beet, obviously, it's a great dye. I choose not to have my hands turn completely red when I work on a beet. And Ruby's out cold, so she's not paying attention to this, which is fine. So what I'm going to do is just cut it so it's easy to peel. There's a lot of dirt on the outside of the beet, and you could scrub it. You could do all of that. I'm just going to peel the outer coat off of it, and then we're just going to dice it up, just a rough dice. If you like beets, cut them a little thinner because they're tasty. They're tasty out of this pickle. It's not the point of the pickle. This is going to just give us a lot of color and some of that earthy sweetness that you get with beets. So all I'm going to do is just coarse chop this guy into chunks like that. Doesn't have to be pretty. Might as well go this way. Do the same. Then we'll talk about our spices. So the recipe says to chop the cumin seeds. when you do that, they just fly all over the place, and you end up, if you put a tablespoon down, you'll end up with a teaspoon. So I don't do that. But I do want to crush up my peppercorns, but I don't want to grind them. So I'm going to use a mortar and pestle here, and all I'm doing is just lost a peppercorn. All I'm doing is just breaking it up so that I can see a little bit of the pulp here. Let me get this done and you can see inside. I'm just trying to get a little bit of the pulp so you can see the peppercorns. But just like with our oregano, it calls for dried oregano. I'm not mashing that up because otherwise it'll be just all over the pickle and it's not fun. So here we go. We'll put it together, just draining our onions, draining all that water off that we just boiled with. Okay. And then these go back in the pot with our beets, with our garlic, with our cumin and pepper. This is sugar, salt, and oregano. And then a cup of vinegar. I'm going to bring this back to a boil for about 10 minutes, and that's all. Once it comes to a boil, we'll let it simmer for about 10 minutes, and then we'll put it in a jar, and tomorrow it'll be magical. Be right back. All right, so it's just been in there about 10 minutes, just bubbling away, just simmering, and it is a great way to dye your clothes, your hands, and pretty much everything else around. So I've got one of these jars. You may have recognized this. This is my old, this was my sourdough starter jar before I realized what a pain it was to clean. But it's great for pickling. So I'm just going to take these guys and deposit them into the jar. And then I'll pour all of the sauce in on top, all of the pickle juice in on top. And then we're going to let it cool on the counter here, and then tomorrow, when we build the tacos, I'm getting maced by the acid in the air and the steam. When we build the tacos tomorrow, I'll show you what these guys taste like. So we've got these beautiful carnitas tacos. We've got some Mexican rice that we're doing. And fresh avocado. The only thing to make these spectacular is these pickled red onions. This color is unbelievable. So you can eat the beets. They're delicious. They're nutritious. I've eaten a few. I may have red teeth because of that. But all we're going to do is pop some of these red onions onto the pork. It is the ultimate topper. It tells your guests that you spent that little extra bit of time. It puts a little bit of the acid bite onto the tacos, and it's astounding. So give these guys a try. Do not get them on your clothes. Do not wear white clothes when you're eating this. I trust that you know how much I love you guys. And have a great night.